Marvel boss Kevin Feige on his future at the studio, Blade update, and why Fantastic Four needed a reboot. When it comes to the future of Marvel Studios, which has taken its licks this year with Misfires, Thunderbolts, and Captain America Brave New World, it's funny how when those movies came out, all these people tried to tell us they were massive successes.
Yeah, they were awesome.
Right? How the spin was in, massive successes, huge opening, blah, blah, blah. It's almost like that's what we see for every one of these fucking movies that comes out. The number one superhero box office brand isn't letting up. Marvel Studios producer and president Kevin Feige hosted a sit-down with the press at Marvel's Burbank HQ, gesturing towards a series of locked doors in the meeting room. It's a 7-year plan, teases Feige. I think it goes to 2032. It's on magnets. It can move around. Feige's feeling particularly chipper. What the hell is this? Marvel's skipping San Diego Comic-Con this year as they remain knee-deep in production on the Russo brothers' Avengers Doomsday and in prep for Spider-Man Brand New Day. Blah, 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 blah. They talk about Fantastic Four and why they needed to reboot it. Why Fantastic Four? Because it's Marvel's first family. It's in the history of our characters. They deserve to be A-listers. They were A-listers in the comics. Every crossover movie we made in the Infinity Saga, Civil War, leading to Infinity War and Endgame, which is really the Infinity Saga from the comics, the Fantastic Four were huge players in those comics, and obviously we couldn't do that then. Talking about the Fox merger. And that's one thing we talked about a lot with a lot of these storylines and stuff. And I feel like that's one of the reasons we may have been forgiving about some of the way that things played out in Civil War like that, taking it from the comics to the screen, is because quite frankly, they didn't have those characters.
Yes.
You know, they didn't have X-Men. They didn't have Fantastic Four, who should have played major roles in both of those things.
Easy.
Now, one thing they were very quick to point out is, hey, you don't need to watch anything else to watch this movie. It's completely standalone, no references to anything. Don't worry, no homework. Just come and watch it, guys. It's a no homework required. Go see the movie. It's literally not connected to anything we've made before. It kicks off Phase 6.
Are they learning?
So go ahead.
Are they learning? Are they learning? Like, have they heard the cry of the people saying, we're not watching your crap if I got to do homework? Maybe.
I think we have heard that from them over and over again. So maybe this is finally when they're starting to roll that out and adjust it. But just think of it this way. The next movie literally has, like, you will have needed to watch probably 50 movies and like 70 TV shows that occurred over the past 25 years to know where all these characters are from. So even if there's very little required for this, Avengers Doomsday is a completely different beast. Getting access, and this is a big point of contention within this story that's getting talked about a lot. Getting access to the Fox Marvel characters has enabled Feige to plus up the next two Avengers movies with the most notorious antagonist in the comic books, Dr. Doom. While the original plan for Avengers movie announced at Comic-Con 2019 was going to feature Jonathan Majors' Kang the Conqueror as the main baddie, the character's future was thrown into question after the actor's arrest for assaulting his then-girlfriend in early 2023. Feige says, even before what had happened to the actor, we'd started to realize that Kang wasn't Thanos.
Oh, really? You mean you didn't think about that before you decided to go all in? You mean you didn't have like some people sitting around like the round table and say, you know, Kang might not be the one. This might not be the big bad that we're looking for. It might not draw the... Really? But that's such a cop-out, man. After it fails and bombs, you're like, yeah, sorry.
There was only one character that could be, because he was in that comic for decades and decades, because the Fox acquisition, we finally had it, and that's Dr. Doom. We'd started talking about Dr. Doom even before we officially pivoted from Kang. In fact, I'd started talking about Robert with this audacious idea before Ant-Man 3 ever came out. Now, I think that this is full of mistruths. I think there's...
Agreed.
I think that there's some truth to it, and what I will
Sorry
say
for yelling,
is...
chat.
I 100% believe that after Ant-Man 3 Quantumania bombed at the box office and
Agreed.
the reception to Kang was not good, I 100% believe they were like, this is not going to work. And remember, when all the fucking Jonathan Majors stuff was coming out, I said, look, I don't think that he should be fired because of accusations, whatever. I think they should get rid of him because he fucking sucks as Kang and no one gives a fuck about that character. That's why you should move off from it. I 100% believe those were the feelings after that movie bombed. I do not believe they started talking to Robert Downey Jr. about Doctor Doom before Ant-Man 3 came out. No fucking
I
way.
agree.
No way.
I agree. Ant-Man 3 was supposed to be the big kickoff. And I guess and that movie was just awful. I mean, the whole film was just awful. I gave that one of the worst ratings ever. It just was a film of convenience. It had no stakes. Nothing happened. It was just terrible. So from start to finish, it was just a terrible movie. So, but yeah, I agree with you. I think they had a lot planned out with Kang to do a whole bunch of stuff. He could be a cool character if they did it correctly, but it's just they didn't know what they were doing back then. And like I think Kang was a complete DEI type of thing when all that stuff was being pushed very heavily back then. It was a complete like, hey, we're using diversity kind of thing. That's what I think it was. It had nothing to do with anything else but that. And that's why the audience we could see that from a mile away. That's why it sucked. So
Jonathan Majors in both the appearances in Loki and in Quantumania came off to me as a theater actor. That's how he felt on the screen. And I don't think it played well. Quantumania was not good, and it was not a good way to set up any sort of hero. It fucking bombed, rightfully so, understandably so. And I 100% believe that after that massive failure, they were like, what the fuck are we going to do? I think that Jonathan Majors getting in trouble gave them an easy out.
It gave him an easy out, exactly.
And regardless of whoever wants to make any arguments about Jonathan Majors, like for the record, he admitted to all of this. It's on tape, like all of this stuff. So for those big Jonathan Majors stands out there, just so you know.
You know what they could have done? They could have just kept Kang on Disney Plus and just did a series of a group of people going after the different variations of Kang in a series. That might have worked better than trying to make him like the Thanos character, but it's current MCU, so maybe not.
Yeah. And then they get into all the new characters that they have access to, some of the cameos that have happened in the past. And then they say, speaking of Blade, despite being taken off the calendar, the project remains in development with two-time Oscar winner Mahershala Ali still attached. The movie with the actor was first announced at SDCC 2019, 6 years ago, with Ali taking Hall H stage and what was then a huge announcement of the MCU's plans across cinema and Disney+. This is back when it was Kang Dynasty, all of that stuff, right? Feige revealed on Friday that while there were 4 versions of Blade in the works, 2 of them period pieces, we landed on modern day, and that's what we're focusing on. On pausing Blade after the exit of 2 filmmakers, Feige says, we didn't want to put on a leather outfit on Ali and have him start killing vampires. You can start and have a... Now, what he means by that is I think he means like what he's trying to say is we didn't have a script that we thought could work.
Okay,
so we didn't want to get into
that's literally Blade.
100%. He absolutely should be doing that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the movie. That's not complicated.
I think the way I would have phrased this if I was him was I said, look, we were really excited for Blade and really want to do something cool. We didn't have a good script. We didn't have a script that we felt we could work. So could we just put him in a leather outfit, have him start killing vampires and figure out the rest? Maybe. We want to do that, but we want to do it the right way. I think if you phrase it that way, it probably would go over better than just that line in and of itself. You can start and have a good script and make it a great script through production, but we didn't feel confident we could do that on Blade. We didn't want to do that to Mahershala and didn't want to do that to us. People asking to Ryan Coogler's going to take it over, blah, 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 all this stuff. They talk about the bombing of the Marvels. They talk about how all the struggles they've had, Disney Plus, blah, blah, blah. And Kevin Feige says similar things before about, we just got too much into quantity over quality. There was too much TV stuff going on. We let things slip. We let things pass by us, blah, blah, blah. He also brings up that, after Secret Wars, we're going to see basically a full one timeline reboot. You're going to see fresh faces playing this. X-Men's going to be what's used to kind of kick that off, and they're going to be different casted. You're going to see probably Captain America and Iron Man get recasted somehow in the MCU going forward after that point. All of this shit. And then he says, with regard to Feige's future, whether there's more Marvel under him, he's not going anywhere. While his contract's up in 2 years, he tells us, Do I want to be making big movies for big audiences in 10 or 15 years from now? Yes, that's all I want to do. Marvel is a great way to do that. Now, depending on what exact question was asked and if that was his full answer, that's not exactly saying I'm not going anywhere. But you could view it that way if you want. The most
I don't know.
The most interesting interview that we saw was actually from The Wrap. It had everything to do with DEI and diversity, Jay. Kevin Feige stands by Marvel's diversity. Marvel's the world outside your window. I said this before woke and DEI became a thing, and I'm still saying it after. While right-wing backlash against Hollywood's efforts of diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI, has led studios to back off corporate efforts to advance the practice. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige said he stands by his studio's efforts over the past several years to increase representation on set and on the big screen with characters like Black Panther and Ms. Marvel, and suggested the MCU won't be pivoting away from that. I said this before woke and DEI became a thing, and I'm still saying it after. Marvel is the world outside your window, Feige told reporters on Friday. It's not Gotham and Metropolis. This is New York and LA. And yes, there's also Wakanda and Asgard, but it's all made up of people who make up our world. Well, that explains the MCU. It's only catering to people from New York and LA, Jay.
But there's also Wakanda.
Yeah, there's Wakanda and Asgard, but it's made up of, people who make up our world. That's why Wakanda is filled with so many white people.
And obviously. Asgard.
We did have to add diversity to Asgardians because we wanted to reflect the world. We didn't add a bunch of white people to Wakanda because we just wanted to look at this certain street in New York City. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But
it's a weird statement.
It is weird. But look, Black Panther is a character who's been around the comics for decades and decades and decades, and is a pretty important character. Yes. So when you decide to include him in these stories and stuff like that and have a standalone movie, incredibly well marketed towards all the demographics they wanted to come out, they showed up to support that movie. It was really, really big. That kind of makes sense because that's a character with a lot of history. When you then decide to take the same approach and push these characters that no one gives two fucks about, Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, Ironheart, right? When you decide to go all in on these characters, bring in America Chavez, bring in all this all new, all different Marvel, these characters that failed, Jane Foster's Thor, all this shit. When you decide to put the focus on those characters, that's how you end up in situations like this. And you know who told us that they were going to do this? It was Kevin fucking Feige. Yes. Exclusive. Marvel will soon have more female heroes than male heroes. Marvel boss wants more female than male heroes in the MCU. Kevin Feige said this in 2018, after they had reached these heights off the back of male heroes that people love from the comic books. He said that he was going to push for that, and that's what he's attempted to do. As much as you want to say that it's reflective of the world outside our window, there's also a reality that this is a world that is reflective of the comic books where they're getting these characters from. So you have to take that into consideration. And if characters were not popular when they were introduced in the comic books, there's a good chance that a lot of people aren't going to be too keen to see them on the big screen if nobody knows who they fucking are. Then all that you have to stand on is your storytelling ability. And when your storytelling ability is way too focused on all the virtue signaling that you're trying to do, regardless of which character's involved, you're going to have a product that is lesser. Your story's going to suffer. That's what we've watched happen in the MCU.
I couldn't have said it better. You're absolutely correct. It's trash. Storytelling's been trash. And also, some of the female leads that could have been done very well, such as She-Hulk. You gave us the most ridiculous version of that character I think we have ever seen. Straight garbage. And I don't even know what you were going for with that, but that's just one example of a few. Valkyrie, you took that character and made it a lesbian, I don't know, like pro pride character to stick up for all the lesbians out there. It's like, why would you do that to that character? But that, you keep pushing that kind of stuff. It's just people are going to walk away. So apparently he got a memo saying we're losing a lot of money and people are losing faith in our product. Something needs to change. And if it doesn't change, so he's like, well, let me start using right-wing talking points. Woke DEI. Maybe that'll get their attention and they'll come back to the theater.
And we have female Silver Surfer. There's a reason that female Silver Surfer was used in Fantastic Four.
Exactly.
Remember these early Phase 5 and shit, or whatever Eternals was, when they decided specifically to use the Eternals because they were a little bit lesser known, so that they could gender swap and race swap all of them and include all these relationships. They could do whatever they wanted with them. That fucking bomb. That didn't work out very well for them. You've introduced all these characters that no one gives two shits about. Guess what? Sam Wilson. People really like Sam Wilson as Falcon. In the comics, when Sam Wilson got the shield, it didn't work out very well. There's a reason it didn't work out very well. People didn't want to see the character with the shield. They liked him as Falcon. So then you bring that idea to the big screen, and spoiler alert, didn't work out very well. Like that. This is what we're talking about.
I mean, you can say the same thing like Black Panther, very successful. You decide to swap him out for a woman, and people were upset, angry, and like, your product stinks. They still didn't recast for another Black Panther.
Now, I also believe that when asked this question, I don't think there's any chance in hell that even if internally they were like, maybe we should focus on the characters that people like, maybe we should stop pushing for quite so much of this. I feel like there's no way in hell he would answer that question if that was going on internally. He would probably say something like this. Now, what I would love for him to say is, look, ultimately, we obviously made a big push for a lot of representation in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Some of those projects worked out better than others. At the end of the day, I think we need to step back and realize that the most important thing, regardless of race or gender or sexuality or whatever we're trying to put into these movies, the most important thing is the story and the character. If we can't write a compelling story, if we don't have a character that people are invested in, then we can't be successful. So ultimately, we want to use all these characters that we have from the comic books, but we want to make sure that the fans are happy. That's how I would have tiptoed around that question if I was leading this fucking studio, right? Where you can not be like, yeah, fuck this woke shit. We ain't doing that shit anymore. But you can also try to appease some other people.
I just think they just got so full of themselves that they were too big to fail, and people would just consume. And now here we are.
And look, it worked. This worked for a while. Same thing with Star Wars. You could slap on it, you can make $1 million or $1 billion, whatever. They were successfully able to have people go to see Captain Marvel, right? How did they do that? A character that no one is invested in the comic books, a character that nobody likes, books have been canceled multiple times, can't stand the character, all this stuff. They were able to do that by the cliffhanger of, at that point, the biggest movie in comic book history was a tease for Captain Marvel. And then the next 12 months almost of press were telling you that this is the movie that is the connective tissue between this and the movie that will then go on to be the biggest movie of all time and in comic book history, Avengers Endgame. This is the important key piece of the puzzle. You have to see this movie. And that's how they were able to do that, even though people didn't particularly like the character or the movie. Obviously, a lot of people were invested in the MCU as a whole. A lot of people got burned by that. And guess what? We need a follow-up to that. You could see the real demand for the character. Yeah, you could see the real demand for the character.
Nobody came. Nobody cared. And would you say that was the worst MCU movie you've ever seen, The Marvels?
Probably.
That one was pretty bad.
It was pretty rough.